Disappointing, anticlimactic, and lackluster are a few words that I'd use to describe Ichigo's merged holified form, which fans have dubbed as the Horn of Salvation. This transformation occurred out of nowhere and had taken a lot of people by surprise. But the problem with the Horn of Salvation is that some people don't really understand where this form came from, and why Juha Bach was so afraid of Ichigo's bankai when he had activated it donning the Horn of Salvation. Fans had immediately loved this form because of how reminiscent it was to Ichigo's Vasto Lord form, as well as its resemblance to holified Tensa Zangetsu. Now, we don't know the full extent of Ichigo's abilities and powers when he has activated his bankai in his Horn of Salvation form, but we do get to see him for a handful of chapters with his Shikai in this form. It is easy to get confused when it comes to Ichigo's powers, transformations, and abilities, and it's because Kubo doesn't really spoon feed you a lot of the information regarding them. It was only recently through Kubo's fan club that we got some answers regarding the form of his Zanpakuto at the end of the series. The answers really helped to clarify what had happened after Juha Bach had stolen Ichigo's Hollow and Quincy powers, and whether if Ichigo can only wield one Zanpakuto as opposed to being a dual wielder. So in this video, we're going to try and draw out as much information as possible from the manga in order to understand Ichigo's Horn of Salvation form as much as possible. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how he was able to achieve this form, what powers or enhancements he had attained while in this form, and what abilities he had utilized against Juha Bach while he was donning the Horn of Salvation. So without further delay, let's get into the topic of the video. This is my explanation of Ichigo's Horn of Salvation. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. The Horn of Salvation form debuts right at the end of the manga in chapter 675. At this point of the series, Ichigo knows the truth about the source of his Shinigami powers, as well as the fact that he has inherited Quincy powers from his mother. He comes to face Juha Bach with a reforged Zanpakuto. Now, up until this point in the series, we haven't seen Ichigo utilize his inner hollow since the Arrancar arc. At that time, Old Man Zangetsu, who is revealed to be a representation of his Quincy powers, had been suppressing Ichigo's full potential, only letting him utilize a fraction of his true power. But with Old Man Zangetsu no longer in the picture, this means that a change will occur when Ichigo activates his hollow powers. When Ichigo had reforged his Zanpakuto into two blades, it had resulted in his hollow powers and his Quincy powers coming into balance with each other. But as Ichigo explains in chapter 676, this balance can be disrupted, which results in Ichigo merging with his inner hollow, and the outcome is this powerful transformation called the Horn of Salvation. What we'll do now is go through all of the chapters that we see Ichigo using this form. In chapter 675, during his battle against Juha Bach, Ichigo is assisted by Orihime, who heals him and puts up shields to protect him. When it appears that Ichigo is being pushed into a corner, he reveals that he has another trick up his sleeve. We are aware that Ichigo is wielding two Zanpakuto at this point. He is in his true Shikai form. The smaller blade is a representation of Ichigo's Quincy powers, while the larger blade represents Ichigo's Shinigami and Hollow powers. Ichigo states that there is somebody who he had wanted to wake up. He is of course referring to his inner hollow. He awakens him by pumping large amounts of Quincy spiritual pressure, which results in the balance between the two powers being disrupted, and this is visually conveyed to us through Ichigo's larger Zanpakuto beginning to turn white. When the dust settles, we see Ichigo in this new form. He has black stripes running down his shoulder and his chest, as well as the black stripes covering the left side of his face, and with the whites of his left eye also turning black, and this titular Horn of Salvation appears on the left side of his head. It is incredibly designed, and it is so reminiscent of the Vasto Lord form, but the difference here is that Ichigo is completely within his senses. At the start of chapter 676, this transformation reminds Orihime of the Vasto Lord form, but Ichigo looks over to her and smiles and reassures her that he is still himself. Juha Bach comments on his appearance, stating that Ichigo appears like a hollow, and he asks whether if Ichigo's hollow has fused together with his powers. Ichigo elaborates as he states that the Quincy powers that that he had inherited from his mother had manifested in Old Man Zangetsu, and the hollow that resides within him had fused with his Shinigami powers that he had inherited from his father. And while these powers were in equilibrium, it was possible to forge them together as Zangetsu into two blades. Ichigo states that after achieving balance, it appears as though his inner hollow has started to behave himself, so he had theorized that if he tips the balance of his powers, he should be able to bring forth his inner hollow, but in a more controlled manner, which is completely the opposite of his Vastolore transformation. He states that in the past, when he had exerted his Shinigami or hollow powers, it had resulted in his inner hollow manifesting, and as for now, his inner hollow appears to have merged together with the rest of his powers. So theoretically, Ichigo should be able to call him out at will, but because he has only recently achieved this balance with his powers, he is nowhere near perfecting it. So the only way that he could bring forth his inner hollow was with some help from his Quincy powers. So it is for this reason that he had awakened his inner hollow and achieved the Horn of Salvation form by pumping large amounts of Quincy spiritual pressure. So with his larger blade having turned completely white, Ichigo puts away the shorter blade that represents his Quincy powers. He then proceeds to demonstrate how enhanced his speed has become in this new form, as he appears within an instant in front of Orihime's barrier, as she is awestruck with how he was able to get in front of her with such a distance. So that's the first feat of enhanced power that we see demonstrated in the Horn of Salvation form. When Ichigo lunges towards Juha Bach and gets into close quarters combat with him, he ends up being pushed back, but Ichigo is able to form a Getsuga Tensho, but surprisingly he fuses it with a Grand Ray Sero, as he fires this combined ability directly towards the leader of the Quincy. Ichigo was able to utilize this ability by using his longer sword as a second horn, and with his blood being used as a catalyst, he was able to fire a Grand Ray Sero and combine it with his Getsuga Tensho. This incredible attack was powerful enough to wound Juha Bach, who at this point was empowered by the Soul King. Commending Ichigo for his magnificent power, he takes Ichigo seriously as he activates the Almighty, declaring that Ichigo's opportunity to defeat him is over. After several clashes and Ichigo beginning to dual wield again, he begins falling for Juha Bach's traps, and this is thanks to Juha Bach being able to see into the future thanks to the Almighty. When Juha Bach takes the upper hand and begins to instill despair within Ichigo, Ichigo declares that he knows all about despair, and he has overcome it time and time again, as at the end of chapter 677, he activates his bankai while in his Horn of Salvation form, but it is chapter 678 where the real controversy regarding this form comes into play. So after Ichigo activates his bankai in this form, we get a brand new Zanpakuto, as he is wielding one large blade with a white outer shell encasing a black blade. But this new form is so short-lived that it doesn't last for more than 2 pages, as Ichigo's Tensa Zangetsu blade is broken in two. He is confused as to when Juha Bach had broken it. The leader of the Quincy explains that he pays respect to Ichigo's powers, and that his new Tensa Zangetsu is a very formidable bankai. It appears that Juha Bach had looked into the future and had seen the real power of Ichigo's true bankai. Deeming it to be too much of a threat to him, Juha Bach had broken it in the future, thus explaining how Ichigo's new Tensa Zangetsu blade was broken in two within the space of 1 page. Now, as much as I can try to explain this, there is no justifying it. What was done here was incredibly rushed. It didn't match up to my expectations, and I for one know that chapter 678 caused a lot of controversy when it dropped. Juha Bach then takes away all of the hype from this Horn of Salvation form by snapping off this horn and firing it right back towards Ichigo. So going back to the enhancements that Ichigo had demonstrated while in this form, we have already mentioned the enhanced speed that he had demonstrated. He also demonstrates his enhanced strength while he is battling Juha Bach. We see Ichigo utilize one hand to restrain the arm of Juha Bach to prevent him from using his sword, and in the next page, after swinging his sword, the force that is generated is powerful enough to destroy a large chunk of the tower. Immediately after Ichigo activates this form, he also demonstrates his incredible spiritual pressure when he exerts it, and he destroys the Wandenreich's main base of operations, Silburn, which is located on top of Waterworld. It is after he does this that Juha Bach refers to his Horn of Salvation form as magnificent. All of these enhancements are similar to when Ichigo used to don his Hollow Mask, and it used to improve his combat abilities and his overall power. So after discussing the Horn of Salvation form, there is one interesting potential for the future. Would it be possible for Ichigo to disrupt the balance of his powers in the other direction? Once he is able to gain more control over his powers, is it possible for him to disrupt the Quincy side of his powers and to bring them forth? Since his Hollow and Quincy powers powers are now merged and are recognized as Zangetsu? And down the line, is it possible for Ichigo to activate both of these sides of his powers simultaneously, resulting in him being able to utilize the true extent of his Hollow and Quincy powers together? Now that's just me speaking theoretically, but during the final few chapters of the manga, we got to see Ichigo's new bankai Tensa Zangetsu, and the true power or ability of it was hinted at through Juha Bach's fear of it, so much so that he went into the future and destroyed it there, so that Ichigo could no longer utilize it in the present. After seeing the Horn of Salvation form and Ichigo activating his bankai in this form, it leaves you really desperate to see more. I know that a lot of people have been theorizing the true power of Ichigo's new bankai for years now, and maybe we'll get it revealed at some point in the future, especially with the Bleach manga continuing with the New Hell arc, and the anime returning to adapt the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Now, from Kubo's comments that he has made thus far, it is evident that he is heavily involved with the production of the anime, and we have recently learned that there is a possibility to adapt the light novels into the anime. So with this possibility, I am pretty confident that the appearance of the Horn of Salvation within the anime will be expanded upon. I really want to see Ichigo use this new form for more than just a handful of chapters. I want more of an explanation as to how the balance of his powers work. Just because he had tipped the scale into one direction, is he able to do it towards the other? What other abilities does he have aside from the Grand Grey Sero Getsuga Tensho? The Horn of Salvation form took us all by surprise, and it was an incredibly hyped transformation, but in the end it went away as quickly as it came. So to wrap up the video, what did all of you think about this transformation? Did you like it as much as I did, and do you want to see more of it like I do? Do you think that it's going to be expanded upon within the anime? And what are your feelings about how Ichigo had awakened his inner hollow and had achieved this new form? Definitely continue the discussion about the Horn of Salvation in the comments down below, and thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you want more videos like this one, then definitely leave your suggestions, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.